Hello friends, today we will learn to make this beautiful furry dog. We start by making the structure of the face in simple lines. If you see that I'm drawing the nose and the shape of the head in simple lines and not curves. So the best method to make any drawing is to make it in geometrical figure straight first, so that you get the proportions right, and then later on you can bring in the curves and the roundness to it. This is the most important part of any drawing, which is the outlining. If the outlining comes well, then the shading or lack of shading also does not matter, but the proportions and the outlining is something that you need to bring in correctly. If you see, I'm drawing lines, kind of straightish line in geometrical figures, square, rectangular, or joining simple lines to see what the structure of the dog's face would be. You need to do the first lining in a very light hand, because right now which I'm doing the second outlining and bringing in the curves this time can be done with the darker hand. And I can also do corrections at this time as well. If you see, I'm bringing in the curves and the shape of the lips of the dog right now, and I'm able to do it easily because initially the outline or the simple lines of mine told me where the dog's lips etc. would be, and now I'm doing the eyes and the forehead in the same way because I know where things will be placed, and I'm able to bring in the curves and the roundness to the face of the dog. Now once the outline is done, I'm also bringing in the angle where his hair or his fur is falling, and also giving structure to all his features, which is eyes etc. See, earlier I had given a place or marked a place where his eyes would fall, and now I'm giving it a shape, a proper eye shape as per the reference picture, and also giving outline to where his hair or his fur would fall. Now step by step I'm going and defining its nose and other features perfectly, giving the roundness further to its lips, giving the shape to its nose etc. I'm able to do all of this correctly because my initial lines to define the proportions and the positions of each of his features was correct. Giving a little bit of an effect for his teeth. Not necessarily you have to draw everything perfectly. Our human eyes can perceive data or pictures correctly, so even brief markings can help you identify what the drawing is all about. Now I started blocking some shadows or darker areas around his nose and eyes, and I'm smudging that with the makeup brush. You can use any brush. Now I'm giving the fur or drawing the fur in the angle where it's falling. You've got to be very careful that you're not doing a flat shading or an even shading. It's important in any furry animal that you draw his fur by lifting hands in the angle that the fur is falling on. And I'm also smudging it and darkening the white area, which is fine because we have to come over and over again, and different shades are needed. Now once we have smudged the area, we are coming again to give the darkness to the darker hair, and this is a process of a sketching or a drawing that you have to come again and again to do this. So once again I'm giving the direction of the fur in a little darker shade, and we have to come time and again. And if you see, the previous shades which we have given or the previous shading that we have given gives the volume to the hair because that is lighter, some is darker etc. Now I'm defining its eyes a little better and going back to defining or giving the darkness to the hair. Making a fine artwork requires a lot of patience because you have to repeat the process again and again. I'm covering its nose with a little shade and smudging it, so you see different kind of textures and colors are coming in there, which is what we want because the nose is not flat, evenly covered with one color. There are multiple shades in a skin or any texture, and hence that's what this layering process helps us with. Now giving the darker shades, I'm seeing as to what the lighter ones will look like. So it becomes a reference point. The darker shade is a reference point, and the lighter shade is also a reference point to define as to what the other shades should look like, or what depth or darkness they should carry. Now I'm defining his eyes a little better. If you remember, we had started with some straight lines, almost a boxy eye, but now I'm giving shape to its eyes, giving the outlining and defining the fur around it a little better. Now step by step we'll keep coming in and doing the fur, eyes, nose, etc., everything time and again, and that is what will bring the beauty of the artwork out. Now carefully drawing the insides of the eyes and smudging it. The reason we smudge it is because the areas where we are not using the pencil remains very white, and that's very stark highlights. That's not what we want, because even the white texture inside the eyes has some shade in it. It's not pure white. So you've got to understand that difference. Now what I'm doing is I'm defining the ends of his ears perfectly, because that's where the darkest of the dark is coming, and that will give me a reference of where the ears start and ends. Same thing I'm doing to his tongue, whereas the end of the tongue I'm defining it perfectly so that I know where the starting and ending point is, and I can do the rest of the piece. Drawing the fur where his ear is lifting up, and leaving some fur into the air as well. It seems that drawing a furry animal is very difficult, but in reality it is not. If you know the process, it's a lot of fun to draw a furry animal, and it's not even tough. What seems like a lot of work is actually very easy. What I'm doing is I'm leaving some lines to show where in the direction of his fur, and then I'm smudging it. So that gives a lot of volume to his hair, and then I come over again with some darker pieces where the shadows are coming in, smudge it again, and I'll again come with the darker pieces. And in the end, if I want, I'll erase it with a eraser to give the highlights. See, now I'm smudging it. It shows that, oh my god, there are so much of fur on his body, and that's what the reflection is. Look at his bottom of his face. I'm giving very simplistic lines to give the direction of where the fur is falling, smudging it now, and I'll come over again with some darker shade, and that will give the volume to his fur. Now defining his lips a little better. You don't have to draw everything perfectly. Like I said earlier, just a feel of something is there is good enough. People get very obsessed by giving absolutely accurate lines in shape and structure. That's not what is needed. So if you see, your eyes will capture the holistic picture of his face, lips and teeth. As long as the structure is there and a bit of shade, which is dark, light, shadow, is correct, the face will come out perfectly. Because the eyes can guess, imagine and see what you've not even created. So giving a little fur around his lips, and you see now the structure has come in. Like I said earlier, I will be giving little darker shade to his fur on his neck, and that will give the volume, because somewhere it's light, somewhere it's dark, somewhere it's darker. But make sure that when you're giving this, you're doing it in the direction where his fur is falling. Otherwise you will mess up the drawing. And if you see, I'm not giving a very blanket flat texture to his hair. I'm giving it some place, leaving a lot of places, going very dark in few places, going very light in some, not touching some area at all. That is how the fur will come out. Now getting into some detailing around the eyes. See, the highlight of the eye needs to come out well, so I'm giving the darker areas a lot more darkness. So around his eyes there is a lot of dark patch and fur. Inside the eyes, I cannot leave it too white, like I said, because it looks artificial. So I'm leaving some shade inside his eyes, and I will smudge it later so that the whiteness is not too stark. Doing the same thing, going on the darker areas now on his fur, and giving the direction of the hair falling over his ears, and that's what the beauty of this particular dog is. Giving a lot of direction to the fur, leaving more darkness and angles. And if you see carefully, I have not drawn fur all over. There is a lot of missing piece and paper shown in the gaps. Now what I'm doing is very interesting. If you see the final picture, there is a lot of light or highlight around his mouth and hair. So how do we show that? That can only come in if the surrounding of the dog is dark, and that is when we can show the highlight. So what I'm doing is I've left a lot of graphite or shading, and I'm smudging it with the paper to make it dark, and I'm coming over my drawing to draw again, because if the background has gone dark, my painting or my drawing should come out accordingly. So coming over again with the pencil on my drawing and giving the shades and the darkness wherever it's needed. Using the blending stem to blend the texture. Blending stem is something which I use very rarely. Giving the shadows on his lips and his tongue, defining it a little better, and of course I will come and give the highlights a little later to it. Like I said, it's a process of repetition, so I'm doing over his fur where the darkness should be more, and that will help me define that yes, there is a lot of hair on his face. The more we do this, the better the artwork will come out. Like I said, you need a lot of patience to be an artist or to draw something which comes out pretty. We can leave an artwork initially with the outline and little shades as well, but it depends on what kind of a outcome you want. I typically like shading a lot. Even if it's messy shading, I would do that. Going over only in the darker areas of the hair where I want the darkness to be, and around his lips and mouth, and smudging it after that. Now time to do the highlights. If you do not have an eraser pencil, you can cut an eraser in a corner and use the corner of it to give the highlights, or use it as instead of a eraser pencil. Now I'm using my eraser pencil to give the highlights which I spoke about. See, if the darkness around his face, if we hadn't given the background, then this white texture or white hair or white highlights will not come through. So if you want the highlights around his face, you've got to give a dark background. I'm drawing some dark hair or lines around his hair so that the highlights come through. Making the spots on his face now. Again, you've got to do it in the direction of his nose falling down. You cannot make it flat. So if you see, I've given that spots also in the angle that his face comes in. And I'm smudging it because it should not look very artificial. And even on the spots on his face, I'm giving darkness a little darker someplace and leaving it lighter someplace to give it a natural look. Repeating what I had said earlier, giving the angle of his fur and darkening some darker places as well. Now I'm giving more highlights around his nose because that's what comes out in the reference picture as well. Because that highlight will only come in when we erase it completely white and make the background lots darker. I'm using a mechanical pencil now, which is my 6P mechanical pencil, to give the darkest of the areas. It helps me because it has a very fine tip and I can do very fine work with this. I use this towards the end of my painting or an artwork when I have to give it a finality. And for a fur, of course, it will help because it has such a fine tip. I've given some white mustaches over his face and darkening the areas around it so that the whiteness of his mustache comes out better. Time to sign the painting now. This is a final product. Thanks for watching. Hope you liked the video. Please like and subscribe for weekly updates.